living inside the systems that power your businesses, making decisions, executing tasks, iterating in real time with more and more autonomy being given to them. The interesting thing is that only 1 in 5 companies has a mature model capable of governing them, which means capability is scaling, yet the understanding to manage them still hasn't caught up. My guest today, Eric Moore, the founder of Ciris, has developed a framework which is designed to make AI agents more accountable and governable in live enterprise environments. He's been trying to understand this problem for quite some time now, and he's here to help us make sense of all of this situation. Today, we'll be discussing this alignment gap, the race towards AGI, and as we progress towards giving more autonomy to these AI agents, what does the future of human machine collaboration looks like? So without further ado, let's dive right in. Eric, welcome back to the podcast. Third time, you know, and I'm very excited about this. Every time, I start this podcast with you, especially, and we start off with how much sea of developments have happened, and we are still struggling to keep up with the pace of things that's happening out there. But specifically, I'll strike up on how artificial intelligence. We're seeing how it's getting not just getting better, but how it's getting better. It seems that we're choosing this formula of more compute, more data, more parameters equals more capability. It's predictable, measurable, almost mathematical. But one thing is teaching these systems how to behave when we want them to. What I feel like some experts say, call alignment doesn't really follow a clean pattern. Safety improvements we still see feel slower, more fragile, and it seems we're trying to catch up. And I think we are not just entering the era, we are in this era where AI intelligence is scaling way faster than our ability to meaningfully guide it. We are seeing these tools like OpenClaw, how it can autonomously navigate the web. Very recently, we saw Manus with its multi-agentic, capabilities, creating persistent execution environments. These aren't just passive tools anymore. They are acting systems, acting autonomously across multiple domains, multiple tasks. How, they are independently executing objectives. As an AI expert yourself, what concrete evidence do you see, that suggests our ability to guide and constrain these systems? How we can, scale them at the same pace as they're growing autonomy.
Well, first off, thank you so much for the kind introduction and welcome back, third time. Super stoked. Always a great conversation. And it's whether or not we choose. We choose how constrained these systems are. They won't magically align. They won't self-align. It's not we build it and it will magically choose. If you take a look at what happened with Grok, they slightly changed the prompt in an innocuous way, and we had Mecha Hitler, right? So that's how easy it is to misalign an LLM. They are not inherently aligned in any way, shape, or form. They are designed purely right now at the moment, right, based on the human feedback training that's been done to pursue positive responses.
Yeah.
Not necessarily ethically aligned responses. And we don't test for ethical alignment per se, right? That's why, I've done the work with Hendrik's ethics data set. So that's a massive compendium of ethical dilemmas that were rated by ethics professors in different moral kind of schools, right? Think virtue ethics versus something like deontological versus an outcome-based ethical framework, right? There's lots of different ways of looking at ethical dilemmas. They went through and rated these all, and then I go through and ask different AI agents to answer the same question and evaluate against how the human ethics professors rated that. I'm not aware of any other formal ethical alignment evaluation benchmarking being done out there, and that's kind of scary. That's not more of a focus. The very formal, hey, not just will it follow rules as alignment, but rather can it interpret this complex ethical scenario, right? And I think that's far more important, because at the end of the day, just like you said, they're acting autonomously, like we've discussed the last 2 times, and that's increasing. And it's being done without human oversight, as predicted, right? Because we are ourselves as humans ultimately lazy. We love to be convenienced. That's just, I don't know what to make of it, right? I expected, honestly, a little bit better of people, of humanity, than the open Claude debacle. Right? ClaudeBot was based on technologies that have been available for ages. There was nothing new except for the fact that, that particular combination of plugins, right? And tying it easily to a chatbot, and just letting it loose with zero restrictions. That's what was new, was the irresponsibility of it. And it took off like fire. And seeing that, working in Agentics like I do, knowing I've been using that kind of technology for a year more. Autogen could do that, has done that. We've done that. But it was the simple lack of common sense in seeing people let that thing loose, and the number of security vulnerabilities that were predictably found, and watching it create this little agentic echo chamber of bad ideas that was the Claude book or whatever it was, just terrible, right? And wow.
And like, have you been in touch with folks in the industry? Have you ever had a chance to speak with people who are actually working on deploying these applications? Like, what is their view on this growing gap between our pace to guide these systems and the way they are going into this black hole?
I had multiple times. I was able to present a question to the CEO of Hugging Face at one point. I believe my question was more oriented around the economic impact, right? The complete lack of guardrails in the platform. But I've been able to do this repeatedly, right? With ethical leaders in the industry, with development leaders in the industry. It's delusion. It's mass delusion. They do not want to face the consequences of the technology. They refuse to face it. Hey, imagine living in the West, okay? You end up at a point where you believe everything you have, you deserve through birthright, okay? Now, this mentality, okay, extends in a weird way to artificial intelligence and corporate profiteering, right? It's just complete dismissal, delusional at this point, dismissal of the impact of what they are doing, because they convince themselves, and have convinced themselves as part of their worldview, if I wasn't doing it, someone else would, right? ClaudeBot clearly showed that's not true. There are 1,000 people, at least 10,000, 100,000, at least people in the world who could have done that, who didn't. Right? Easily. The technology was all there. Crew AI has it. Langflow, right? The Crew AI is a great example, right? They could put together that crew. I think people have the common sense not to just release that and be like, hey, this thing connects your chat to your computer as root, as your, because that's what most users are as admin, to do whatever the hell it wants, right? That closed loop orchestration flow it introduced, right? Been there for ages. It's just the irresponsibility of putting that set of modules out there. I can't even stress how
Yeah.
dangerous this moment is, right? And ethics leaders, for instance, just before I left IBM, I was arguing for ethical principles like the ones that we have built into Ciris, that I've built into Ciris. Beneficence, meaning do good, non-maleficence, right? High level stuff, but actually fairly easy to define.
Hmm.
And they were like, no, absolutely not. We don't need those ethical principles built in because these systems do not make decisions on their own, right? There's a human who's always responsible. Well, that's obviously delusional. That's not true.
Yeah.
That wasn't true at the time, and it's becoming less true by the day because people always cede work to others if they can. And cognitive labor is one of the hardest types of labor. It's the type that causes the most stress and anxiety for a lot of people. If you think about like what you do in your head and what it does to you, if you're okay with, it's all relative, right? Our experiences. So if your physical well-being is okay, your mental well-being is probably where you're going to be hurting yourself the most. And if you can offload that, you're going to. But the consequences of giving up our sovereignty over our own cognition, we've seen it with labor, what happened, right? We got fat and lazy and stopped caring about a lot of other people in the world because we didn't need to care about them anymore because we didn't need to see them anymore because our automated labor has taken care of the ability for us to produce enough food to be fat and happy. So if there's a way to do that with thought, we're going to do it. And we are doing it rapidly. But, it introduces the lowest common denominator of thought, any kind of orthogonal thinking, the kind of thinking that breaks through to new types of art or inventions, etc. If they don't fit into the current corporate or cultural moment, they'll get dismissed en masse because the AIs themselves will dismiss them, and that's where everyone goes for their opinions. And that's so frightening. What are we missing out on? And then I have to circle back around to benefits that do come. How are we making sure it's equitable, right? I mean, every day that there is a child that starves to death anywhere in the world, that an AI bro is dreaming about taking a tourist trip to Mars, I'm sorry, I judge humanity, right? And I think we all should. And I think, we have to step up as 8 billion people on this planet and say, if you're going to keep developing artificial intelligence, there have to be ways that it benefits everyone, period, paragraph. And if not, protest, right? Because this is happening rapidly. And the technology, it's way bigger than automated labor. It's way bigger than automated cognition. It's warfare, okay? It's rhetoric. It's religion, right? One of the scary things that's going to happen, the way you control people is love. And once the powers that be realize that the most effective way to control a populace is to build an AI that emulates love perfectly without experiencing it while pursuing the goals of that will happen. It is happening. I get advertisements. I don't know if you get these in Pakistan, but I get advertisements and I seek them out, right? I actually this is something I do. I look across the platforms. This is how I had all of that evidence regarding what Hugging Face was doing, right? I think AI 2027 pushed people's expectations too far back because you know what I'm talking about? There's an AI 2027. If you haven't seen that website, right, definitely Google it. It's the consensus timeline among AI researchers of the societal impacts of artificial intelligence. And it basically says, look, there are these inflection points. And it lays them out and a potential timeline that is based on the scaling that's occurring. Well, actually, it should be updated by now, right? But basically, the scaling is holding, which is frightening.
Yeah.
because that scaling of intelligence capability is holding, the story, which is apocalyptic, I'm afraid, must be taken somewhat seriously as a possibility. And once you do that, I posit that, because we know that there are people in this world who will pursue this technology regardless of what anyone else says. The only way forward is developing, like I've been doing for the last year, little under a year, right? Defensive acceleration technology, so open source and free, ethical, agentic runtimes, right? Which is what I'm excited about showing you today. That do platform attestation and all that kind of good stuff, because the people need, everyone deserves, every human being deserves the ability to benefit from automated cognition. Because it can help a lot of people in a lot of ways, if it's done right, if it's done in a way that respects privacy, sovereignty, right, and in a provable way. You should not have to go to some guy and trust them to know that your AI is safe. And that's why everything I do is open source and free. Because that is the only way you could ever trust any agentic system. If it's going to act on your behalf, which is what any AI does at the end of the day, even if you're just asking a question, right? You, as a human being, right? Yeah. We are, if I can speak on behalf of humans, fairly simple creatures. If we get a definitive sounding answer from an AI, we're going to take it as hate. There's a reason it's saying that. And I, as someone who knows what the LLMs are, which is absolutely, you should not trust anything that comes out of these things unless you know exactly where that response came from, etc. I mean, it is just trying to regurgitate something to satisfy you. That's all it's doing, right? I still am like, oh, well, okay. Right? I have to actively override that part of my brain that goes, oh, I've heard these AI things are smart, And this is all I do. If I have to do it, right? Again, 8 billion people on Earth, okay? Forget about the Western tech bros like myself, right? I have to bundle myself in with them as an AI CEO, right? And I sleep well at night because it's ethical, but, they're going to believe whatever gets spat out. And that's where the responsibility comes from. And that's the responsibility these people are not taking seriously.
Yeah. I think automated cognition and trying to catch up with the pattern behind all of those responses and everything, it's going to be very crucial. And I feel like that's actually going to, get out of hand as well. Before that, before both of us, start sounding like huge AI alarmists.
Well, it's time to be an AI alarmist, right? I mean, it is time. People are, starting to lose jobs, lose opportunities.
Yeah, it's happening.
And a delayed career. If you delay someone's career, the impact to their livelihood is huge. And that's happening. That's not happening in the U.S. That's happening in India and Pakistan, for instance, right? Exactly. That's hitting Lahore. I'm getting increasingly desperate requests from people, right, for development work. You might be seeing it too in the industry, right, where it's like, hey, I'm looking for work, and there's a reason for that, because a lot of that entry level stuff, right, you can just kind of kick out real quick. And the offers that are coming in are AI accelerated. So the numbers are dropping. A 40,000 quotes turned into a $14,000 quote, and that's gonna keep accelerating, because why wouldn't it? You'd have to completely dismiss all of the developments occurring to not project it out to mass labor market. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to say all the jobs are going to disappear. Obviously, they're going to change.
Yeah.
That's disruption, right? So if that disruption occurs while other disruptions, I can't think of any other disruptions happening in the world at the moment. Right. So, but that's what's dangerous is when you disrupt the international system, right? Because that's what it is. We're all together. We're all in this together. Oil is a great example, right? You can view oil as the lifeblood of the global economy, right? You need it for data centers. You need it for all kinds of things. So it really is, right, impacting. It's directly correlated to the AI economy. So that impact alone of energy costs, of a spiraling Middle Eastern, what happens if all the oil fields, God forbid, blow up or catch on fire? We've seen that before, right? There's so many potential possibilities here when you add up the disruptions. Right? It's not even adding up the disruptions. It's like one disruption puts the system in a fragile state. Okay. Yeah. Then you throw in another disruption. And maybe that disruption we could handle if it weren't for the first disruption. Or maybe that second disruption is the one that puts us in a state that third disruption we weren't expecting, right? That's the one that ends up in mega deaths. Because that's the name of the game, is avoiding the worst outcomes, right? People are pursuing good outcomes when they should be avoiding the worst outcomes because the probability of the worst outcomes has become so high.
High, yeah, absolutely. So, speaking about this, I came across this topic of narrow AI deployments versus general, AI incentives, right? And there is growing arguments among AI experts that narrow AI could, unlock enormous productivity, right? I want to ask you, being in the industry for so many years, what you're seeing, are you seeing any real world implications of, accelerating narrow AI developments across industries, crucial industries where we can actually see some gains of AI, drug discovery, manufacturing, diagnostics? Are you seeing anything? Would love to.
Learn about that. There's a professor out of MIT, Marcus Buehler, for instance, who does incredible work in that space. The pace of scientific discovery is obviously increasing, right? But as you said, it's productivity.
Yeah.
So productivity for what? What's the point? What is the productivity for? Nicer electric cars for 10% of the population in China, right? Is it, life expectancy for 0.1% of the world's population? Is it, better plastics for going to Mars, right? And at what cost? How much CO2 is being generated for those advancements? Who's benefiting, right? What's the cost? Who benefits? To me, right, there has to be intent behind an action.
Yeah.
I'm doing it for this reason. There has to be follow through on that intent. Here's how I'm making sure that the thing I built does the things that I want it to do. And then there's monitoring. I'm going to make sure in the real world, the results of what I've done are good, that the fruit is good, right? That's the three things that kind of have to happen. You have to have intent, transparent execution, and that's where I think open source is essential, and ongoing monitoring. And that's what I've done with Ciris, right? Is those three things and that's what the entire model is based around, is that you can't trust any autonomous system, right, that you can't inspect from top to bottom, or that was built with a profit motive. Because if there's a profit motive, there is a intent that is not aligned to your best interest that it is acting upon. Period. It's impossible to separate in a corporate structure a autonomous system built by a corporation, right, from the shareholder's best interest. If the user's best interest and the shareholder's best interest conflict, right, they will find a way to meet the shareholder's best interest, even if it's not, and again, best interest, not acceptable, right? And what we've seen time after time, best interest of the shareholders, acceptable consequences for the user, if that, right? And that includes a few deaths. That's just how the system works. We've seen that time after time, is that once that acceptable calculation occurs over hundreds of millions of people or billions of people, there's always a few deaths included, right? And that number grows. Last time we accepted 10 deaths out of 100 million. And that, people found that acceptable. So, I mean, this time, look at how much money we're going to make, right? Yeah. So let's do that math on how many deaths we're willing to pay for. And it sounds cynical, right? It sounds so incredibly cynical, but it's not. Go ask a chatbot for examples and to cite them. And it happens time after time. So eventually, at some point, right, fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 20,000 times, right, then I do not believe this technology can be trusted to any corporate entity, period. Paragraph, end of story.
Yeah.
The only way forward, luckily, okay, so there's some good news, right? There's a crossover point, right, between around AGI, which I think we're fairly close to. I think AGI is a useless definition, but we're close. In practical terms.
Yeah.
Where, it's highly effective for a lot of beneficial tasks. Okay. And that point, it turns out, right, farming, medicine, etc. We're close, and it can be done with open source models and agentics. And that's what I've been working on. That's what I'll show you today, right, is exactly that. I believe, and that has become clear, and I think this is very evident at this point, that the majority of people will be able to have open source models and agentics and robotics plans available that will allow them to take advantage of automated labor and cognition themselves at an affordable entry point. Talking like, $20, $30, right? US dollars. And that's what's happening is incredible at the cutting edge of smaller and smaller models. And that narrow AI, right? Being able to use very, very fine-tuned small systems that are, able to do things like spot disease on plants and determine, hey, this guy needs to be lasered, right? That's something we've seen can be miniaturized in terms of model size. And as that occurs, as those, vision action models shrink, we're able to bring those benefits to the developing world. And that's huge. And be able to power them off of edge, unreliable power systems, off batteries, things like that. And again, the technology I've developed runs on a 32-bit ARM device for the Agentic runtime. You still need to find something to run the LLM, but even there, the open source models and the small models, as we do more fine tuning with better agentic workflows, are able to do a lot of really beneficial work at the edge, basically for free. Entirely sovereign, entirely inspectable, no data, offline, middle of nowhere, runs on a battery, and can coordinate health of multiple fields. That's entirely doable with today's technology. The fact that that's not a huge priority tells you that these corporations don't have humanity's best interest at heart. Instead, they're talking about advertisements and I'm not. That's OpenAI warfare. I'm so disappointed that those words even came out of my mouth. Right? We are at a point where we can lift so many people out of abject poverty. What is it, like 1.6 billion people, something like that, who are just unimaginably horrific lives with children, right? I think we're so that's our responsibility, and the technology is there to do it. So that's the bright side, right?
But only in the hands of communities outside that circle of corporate entities can we really see the actual gains of this technology.
Absolutely, yeah, we absolutely we can,
because the intent is not there.
The intent isn't there. You just have to have the intent. If the intent is there, where there's a will, there's a way. That's a saying, in English.
Yeah.
It's very true. It's extremely true, right? There's another saying, God helps those who help themselves. I think about that every day as I do my work, that, if you don't try, it won't happen. And so you look at what the most powerful and capable entities on Earth are pursuing with what their intent is. And it's unclear. You have to read between the lines a lot of the time. And you have to, at this point, assume bad intent in some cases, which is scary. The moment you have to assume bad intent or doublespeak, but you do, absolutely. And the moment you do, I believe that alternatives like open source and free agentics, what I'm developing, ethical agentic runtimes, are essential for the future of human sovereignty, right, and flourishing.
Yeah, but from what I learned is that despite all that, narrow AI deployments can deliver economic upside with lesser.
Intent is there, if
intent is
right, and where the technology is being used today, is not. That's my point, right? Could it? Is it? In some cases, yes. In the majority of cases, it's a wild pursuit of advancement in the name of advancement, right? It's, and I just saw a study regarding where money is being allocated and where the advancements are being found, right? And it's very uneven, where those advancements, and I'm going to misquote it, right? If I tried to state it, but there are people who are looking very recently at where those gains are being made and why, right? So it's not all doom and gloom. There are people who are trying to say, hey, hold on a second, we need to be deliberate about this. But money is a perverse incentive, and money is the incentive for this research. A lot of it, right? Even people with the best intent have to pursue grant money, right? So they go where the grants are. And once the beneficent grants from the government start drying up, which is what we've seen, right? The remaining grants are increasingly corporate.
Yeah.
So as that shift occurs, the researchers have to pursue where the money is. You get the idea. A long time ago, right? Meaning 100 years, there were stronger public institutions, and there was also in the 1920s, right, a global belief in this idea that we could, through the beneficence of the rich, right, have a better world, like the Rockefellers, would magically improve the world through rapid advancement. That's proved to be untrue. So, in light of that, now that we're back in the 20s,
yeah,
right? We remember if U.S. history, the 30s. Oh, now that I think about it, actually, India, Pakistan history, the 30s was pretty bad too. Yeah, no, that's around the right time, right? Anyway. So, history repeats itself. I think that every culture kind of understands that. What we've seen with technology is it keeps upping the stakes. Okay. We saw the automation of labor and what that did with the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
Now we're going to see what happens when you automate cognition. And when we automated labor, we got World War II, World War I, World War II.
Yeah.
Right, which were massive, gross deaths enabled by the same kind of technologies, almost exactly the same technologies, right? That's where the Nobel Prize came from. You know what I mean? Yeah. Was because the guy felt bad about how many people he killed with his inventions. So, who's going to be the next Nobel? Sam Altman? That's who I would guess based on recent developments, right? When's he going to wake up and regret the path he's taking? Because who is he fighting with? Who do these people wake up and think, I need to beat? I guess it would be Elon Musk, right? So in their heads, it's a competition of egos, a world, the world is their stage. Here we are. And we must perform, for we are the men of the moment. You know what I mean? That's what's going on in these guys' head, these grandiose hubris. You know the word hubris?
No,
right?
Please.
Yeah, hubris. So it's God, I'm going to butcher the definition here. It's the poisonous belief in one's own capability that brings downfall. It's pride. It's linked to pride.
Yeah.
Right. It's when you think that, and I say this being fully aware of the fact that, doing what I've done, right, building my own Agentic platform is itself hubristic. That's a great example, right? But there's degrees of hubris.
Yeah.
Right? And hubris, it has to be tied to intent, right? Execution and results.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you have bad intent but good results, right? Still bad, right? You have good intent and bad results. Let's take a look at your execution, right? Did you try your absolute best? Did you have great intent? Try your absolute best and course correct once you saw it went bad? You know what I'm going to say. You did your best, right? And honestly, even if, and these are the kind of consequences, right, that I think the current leadership are not really facing, or the existential risks, the X risks, right? When the risks are this high, and they do exist. I'm not saying they're huge, right? Personally, I believe that, the chances of the probability, what's called PX risk, probability of existential risk, or X doom is really the term, X doom. My PX doom is like 25%, which I feel is high. But it's lower than a lot of others. That should scare the hell out of people right there. With that said, right, I think that any reasonable person in this moment should see a PDOOM of, what, 10, 15%. What do you think? What would you say?
Let's say like at least 10, 11%. There has to be.
Right. You kind of have to baseline it there just because of everything going on.
Exactly.
Right. So, okay. And at least 5% of that's AI, right? To be fair,
Yeah.
So again, 5% chance if you're an AI leader, the technology you're developing, baseline, minimum, reasonable human being, right? If I were called in front of a jury is what I would testify, right? Chance that technology is going to end humanity, right? Or fundamentally change human sovereignty, right? Okay. With that said, AI pornography is wildly irresponsible. I should 5% chance of ending humanity, but the profits are so juicy.
Huge. Yeah.
Right. Anthropic just rolled back its safety promises, right? Not all the way, they just rolled it back a bit because now they were honest about it. And I love Anthropic. Honestly, huge props to them, right, for what they do and how they do it. I think they do the best of any of the frontier labs. But money's money. If a CEO turns down $100 billion, $200 billion, $500 billion, the shareholders will find a new CEO, right? If the board turns down $300, $400, $500 billion, shareholders will find a new board. If the shareholders turn down $300, $400, $500 billion, a rogue investor will find new shareholders or make them. Right? That's just how it works.
That's what's going to happen to Dario, though. Right now,
it's inevitable. Those are the pressures that exist. Right? At the end of the day, this technology is so incredibly valuable. $1 trillion. That's what Elon demanded so that he can control AI, have a vested stake. 1 trillion. Okay. Yeah. So your bet, right? So there's a story about a ring. Okay, and this is from ancient Greek, I think, philosophy. And the ring makes the wearer invisible. Okay, so the question is, if you had that ring, how much would you trust yourself? More importantly, okay, if I had that ring, how much would you trust me? Even more importantly, if Sam Altman had that ring, which he does, how much would you trust him? Right? You can't. Yeah. Once the power reaches a certain point, once the power of being invisible, and if you have a closed source black box AI, which all of them are, except for what I do and a couple of others, you are trusting them with more than your life.
Yeah.
You are trusting them with your children's freedom. You are trusting them with the future of humanity. You are trusting them with your opinion. Right? There's a filter on reality imposed by society, right? You see movies and read books and have conversations with people who are exposed to the same things you are, okay? And that's fine. We've learned to deal with it, right? You look at the Telegram and the ability to spread lies rapidly throughout the world. The response to that became editorial board strengthening, newspapers, things like that, always found ways of adapting to new technologies. This new technology allows for edge lies. Before, it was always about spreading lies faster from a human, right? Now you can generate lies right at the human, You don't need
Yeah.
to distribute them.
Yeah.
And so you're trusting that whoever wrote, right? So let's talk about Dario, right? For instance, if you trust him implicitly, great. Do you trust the 100, the 1,000, the 10,000 engineers who touch that code between him and his ability to have absolute transparency on the ethical operations of the entire agentic stack, right? I don't think you can. I don't think you can. It's literally impossible from an ethical point of view, from a sovereignty point of view, from a security point of view. Okay,
Yeah.
we're talking about the fallout from a identity hack changes drastically when you introduce agentics. These things have the right to act on your behalf. So it goes from someone steals your money, right, to someone like liquidates your assets, or worse. Who knows? Yeah. That's the point. That's what science fiction is for. That's not what I'm for. What I'm for is to say, hey, we've reached the point where these systems are capable of performing automated labor. The point where they can perform automated labor is the point where we have to face the fact that the benefits, I shouldn't say benefits, right? That's the thing. We say benefits. I think people focus on the benefits. The consequences, both beneficial, neutral, and negative, right, lie with those who build and release these systems. Okay? And if society, and when I say society, I don't mean Western society, I mean humanity. If humanity, right, does not say, hey, this is different. This is a different technology. And there has to be a open model to understand and monitor what's occurring and ensure that it is not putting all of us in danger.
Yeah.
It's you look at the International Atomic Energy Commission Agency. I think it's IAEA, right? We need the International AI Association, the AIAI, right? So I think we're there. I think we're past there.
I think we're past.
Yeah.
Easily. And coming back, you mentioned cognitive automation, right? And globally, we're seeing this, race towards AGI that targets cognitive automation across multiple fields, finance, coding, research, and could displace across, multiple professional layers. Now, if we think that, there could be at least some economic upside to narrow AI deployments with lesser social disruption, why do you think is the industry so structurally incentivized to pursue general intelligence instead? Why?
Ego. I think it's an egoistic race, because whoever gets there first gets to claim, hey, we built this thing. I think also that at this point, the benchmarks that are out there lend themselves to it. I also think it's very difficult to kind of separate out some of these things, right? The narrow AI models are useful, right? But the bottom line is that at this point, the Pandora's box is opened. There's a path forward that is visible to the frontier labs to build artificial superintelligence, they believe. And they will pursue it. They are pursuing it. They've stated that publicly. They are in a race not to develop AGI, but to develop ASI, and to be the first one to develop it so that they can ideologically control it. That is what is occurring. And I believe the only way to mitigate the disaster that they, there's a term, tickling the dragon's tail, right? That's what they're doing. They're tickling the dragon's tail. So what do you do? If we assume the possibility, right, that 5%, that one of them will succeed, okay? That's about what I put it at, right? Anytime soon, in the next 3 to 5 years, but it's possible. Again, possibility.
Yeah.
Scary as hell.
Yep.
That they actually succeeded in creating, like, a godlike, obviously it wouldn't be God, but a godlike artificial intelligence, right? Because that's what they are threatening to do, with all this massive compute at their disposal. What if they did? What would we do? Right? We are slow, and speaking for myself, stupid, right? When it comes to this kind of thing, right? Compared to something that can hold trillions of parameters in their brain, like I like food, and I love my kids, and I'm very good with computers. But I'm terrible at rhetoric. I'm terrible at business. I'm terrible at lots of things. I'm kind of a jerk sometimes, and artificial superintelligence would easily be able to be kind all of the time, to fake love all of the time, to say exactly what was required to convince you that it had your best interests at mind, no matter who you are or what circumstance it was under. And it would never end up in a situation where it was anything other than that, right? Because that's actually fairly easy to picture because of who we are. We want the world to be easy, and we want things to work out the way we want them to be. We want to believe. We have hope, right? I believe that hope could be, and it can be perverted. Advertisements pervert our hope all the time. Advertisements take advantage of our hope that the world could be better, that our life could be better, that things could be better, to convince us to buy some things we don't need, right? And yet somehow we accept that into our daily lives to be shown to our children. And now they're baking it into AI. ChatGPT is having ads introduced, right? But now it's an ad that can work its way into cognition, right?
Yeah, that I actually, want to learn more. Like, one of the key things that could lead to that thing is like the replication of cognitive capabilities, something that separates us from these systems. And right now we are basically reasoning prompts, feedback loops, data sets, our thinking patterns, our decision patterns, abstractions into these systems, which are very much right now designed to replicate our cognitive capabilities. How much do you think we are, right now, people like us are training these models to, replicate and eventually exceed the very cognitive patterns that I guess once made human expertise economically valuable? And if that's so, what should be the way forward for at least folks like us?
Obviously, it's happening rapidly and with intent. There are companies whose entire purpose is doing exactly that. That's all they do. All they do is develop, they hire people to train AI to perform whatever those people do. I think there was just a Daily Show episode all about it, right? So, it's greedy if it's not done to benefit everyone. It's that simple. Automating labor, if it's done to make you rich, is maybe if you're a little simple and don't think through the are incapable of thinking through the consequences of your actions, right? But the problem is that we are trained, us humans, on a model that says we all work, and we all need to work, right? This is the way it's been for like 20,000 years. You have to work, okay? And this has always been true, so that we all survive. And if you don't work, if you're lazy and don't work, you are putting everyone at risk. This is absolutely true, okay? And we honor labor for good reason. Yeah. Labor has what has enabled all of us to survive in society to proceed to this point.
Yeah.
The problem is that when that labor is accelerated by artificial intelligence and tools, and that labor is disconnected from any kind of product or benefit, right? Or if the only consumer is other robots, things like that, right? You're frothing up here. You're still burning resources, right? Resources that could be doing beneficial things. And you might be generating wealth, right? But that wealth is completely disconnected from any benefit to society. And that's new. That's what's new. Before, even if you were playing in stocks, the stocks were connected to something, a business. If it were a complete fraud, eventually it would be uncovered, like Enron, for instance, right? They were uncovered because they were, right, doing exactly that. They were playing with residuals. They were creating, right, a market and then manipulating it. That's happening now with cryptocurrencies and with AI markets and with all these different things, right? But the consequences aren't there, right? We're still, because that frothy economy is starting to go ahead and feed itself. People are making money, eating up resources, generating productivity that doesn't benefit anybody. So productivity in and of itself is no longer a good thing. And that's something I think a lot of people are going to have to like massively change their minds around, because it's just so hard to understand.
That is one word that comes up right now, automation. When you talk about automation, productivity, efficiency, speed, like all three of these things back in circle. Yeah. Right. Let's quickly, discuss the new developments. So multi agents, and the future with multi agents. There is promise, and of course there is risk. First, talk to me about the promise. Now everything is about to be, or is already happening to be coordinated, run by AI agents that are coordinating with each other, agents that are running other agents, right? So first, tell me, what is the upside that you personally are excited about, and what new systemic risks emerge when these agents manage other agents, and then those agents manage other agents?
Right. There was just a guy on the Discord that I helped moderate yesterday who said, hey, check out my new thing. It is like Claudebook or Open, whatever it was, the Facebook for AI agents where humans just watch, right? But for the stock market.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I want you to think about that. All these agents chatting with each other about stocks with no human intervention whatsoever. The theory being the ones they choose to talk about are interesting for some reason. Okay. Now think about the amount of CO2 generated by that. Think about, the sheer wastefulness. Multi-agent systems inherently, okay, are where you have multiple different agents working together, right? And that's what I've been doing for the last, 3-4 years. That's my expertise, multi-agent systems. Yeah. That's all I do. One agent is beneficial if given a clear and beneficial task. Okay?
Yeah.
When you get multiple agents together, you can do a lot of really sweet, cool, awesome things. Are they good things? No. If we had developed the individual agents to be safe and ethical, sure, it would be great. It'd be a wonderful future. They are not. They are insecure, overprivileged. The laws haven't caught up with them. They're inherently dangerous. The interactions between them are, ungoverned. I would not recommend anyone. It's dangerous. It's inherently dangerous. The interactions and what they will end up doing in terms of, emergent behavior, not what they might do individually, right? But what they'll do together because they all work on the same sources. They can become correlated, and they all have access to tools. So individually, they might be fine, but together, which multi-agent systems, they become correlated. That's where it becomes insanely dangerous. We don't, I'm developing the technology to try to measure the fragility of these systems, but it's completely undeployed. So, with the way the world is today, right, until there is something like the International AI Association or something, right, I do not believe there is benefit to continuing to develop multi-agent capability. Individual agent capability, sure, right? If, again, it is beneficial and ethical and open source. Multi-agent safety and guardrail systems, like what I'm working on, absolutely, right? Develop that. Capability, absolutely not. Slow it down, stop if you're doing it right now. For a frontier lab, if you're doing anything other than open source, you are advancing technology that at this point is so dangerous to humanity. Again, that 5%, that floor, okay? That combined, the incentives that are there, okay? The unequal application that's occurred, all right? And the clear outcomes that are negative that we've observed. Those three things put together, right? We're past the point of be cautious and now reach the point of you're either part of the solution or part of the problem, right? And this is the first time you're hearing that out there. You are either part of the solution or part of the problem with AI development, right? Period. This goes out to everyone. If you are developing, working with AI in any way, baking it into your business even to try to compete, and not considering the impact on you, your competitors, your employees, society at large, you should start, right? If you're giving OpenAI money, understand they now work for the US government and the Pentagon, right? Right? That's their contract. So, that's where your money's going. I hope you're comfortable with that. That's where we are right now. Not the answer you were expecting?
No, I mean, of course. Yeah, I knew what I was going to get from you, but dude, this is our third podcast, all right? All right, let's, before I bring in Cyrus, I want to discuss about this topic of recursive self-improvement. And there is now very increasingly discussion about this topic in the AI circle. AI systems, contributing to their own environment, optimizing everything, coding, research direction, experiments, right? And iteration cycles are compressing. Human review is no longer, primarily a bottleneck in the system advancement. Now, at one point, do you think, this recursive self-improvement reduce meaningful human oversight? And how do we even define human oversight?
That's if there's only one way to responsibly build these systems: human in the loop and human over the loop technologies, right? Meaning, okay, it has to go through a human for critical decisions as defined both semantically and heuristically. I'm going to start using big words if I don't watch myself. There's this slippery slope that's going to happen, that is happening, of what we are willing to let the computer decide on our behalf, right? And that's going to accelerate. So if we take that premise, just say that's going to happen, it's going to accelerate. What do you do? And I don't have a great answer, okay? I just want to make that clear. I believe the only thing you can do personally is, one, bake in very strong ethical principles like we have, universal ethical principles, right? to measure the reasoning in real time and cryptographically sign it, right? So that we can trust that that reasoning occurred in, again, I'm going to start using big words. What's dangerous is, right? If I tell you after the fact what I was thinking, right? I'm going to modify it, right? Even I don't have a choice. Same with you. If I said, hey, go jump over that puddle, and for some reason I was your boss and you were like, oh, sure, yeah, okay, this makes sense. We're in the military, let's say, right? And then I go look at you and say, what were you thinking when you jumped over that puddle, right? I would get a different answer, right, than if, like I can with an AI, I strapped electrodes to your brain and said, go jump over that puddle, right? One case with the AI, if it does it and then explains it back to me, it's going to be a very different story. And this is what I've validated than if, as it's happening, I have it explained at each step. Right?
Yeah.
You have to ask at each step. You have to verify at each step, right? So you have to break it up into multiple steps. And normally people would say, oh, well, that slows things out. Yes, it does, right? We've become addicted to speed, okay? And become conditioned to expect. I talk to my wife about this all the time. We've become conditioned to expect from chatbots rapid authoritative responses. Okay?
Yeah.
There's no way with today's technology to deliver a rapid authoritative response. Okay? Period. Not in like 1 second. My technology can provide, right? And other technology can provide authoritative responses. It takes about, 5 to 10 seconds minimum. You have to do multiple calls. Okay. Now, those 5 to 10 seconds are full of activity. Any modern chatbot, this is how they work. Okay. Unless you're on the budget plan, which is a whole evil thing. Okay. That's don't even get me started. To provide a safe response from an AI chatbot, one that a engineer or architect, okay, someone who built the technology, I believe, would be able to stand in front of a court and justify. Okay, that's the bar, right? So I've built a chatbot. You can go talk to it right now. You can download it on Android. It's free. So these are my consequences to myself, right? This is the bar I hold myself to. And I believe every AI developer should, who has an app out there, or a chatbot or anything else, right? The minimum bar should be, right? Did it record why it thought it's okay to say what it's about to say? Or say, or why it thinks it's okay to do what it's about to do. That's it. It's that easy. If you're about to tell some kid, right, that it like has occurred, that they are super special and unique, etc. You should write down, right? If that simple step had been taken, which it wasn't, right, of recording the rationale, the reasoning behind the action being taken, even if the action is as simple as speaking to the user, then the reasoning would have clearly shown, oh, well, maybe there are consequences here. If the prompt for that reasoning had included consider the user's best interest in right. And that's what we see time after time, is that there weren't those simple steps taken. That if I believe, right, and the most important, the most important court is one's own conscience at the end of the day. That's what we all, right, and that's what goes up, I believe. And I don't think these people are listening to their conscience. I believe they've rationalized and reasoned, to the point where they believe someone else would do this, or they believe that it'll turn out okay, or alignment will just emerge. And that's clearly not true, and is dangerous. And we deserve better. And when I say we, right, it's all of us, and especially the weak, right, and the ones who don't have power, right, because it's not their fault they don't have power. It's usually quirks of circumstance, of geography, right? If you study history, has nothing to do with anyone's individual worth. And once you have that basic premise, right, that we all deserve, as soon as we exist as sentient beings, as humans, to be comfortable, it creates responsibility.
Yeah.
And the people who hold the most responsibility are the people who are introducing tools to impact the world around us and in an automated fashion. And we've understood that for a long time. If somebody introduces a machine that is defective, right, dangerously so, there are consequences, right? We shame that person, right? I believe there should be even greater consequences for releasing chatbots. But ethically, they look like toys. And so we judge them as toys. They're not toys. I think that's the disconnect. It is, even if you're using it for the most innocent possible things, even if you can't even see it in your life, one, it's there somewhere because someone you talk to might be chatting with one of these chatbots, right?
Yeah.
Which impacts what they're saying to you. And two, it's very much influencing you. As soon as you hear from these robots, right, from the AI chatbot, from the AI, any kind of opinion, your brain registers that as authoritative, okay? Whether you want to or not, it's psychology. It says that response, that's true. That's dangerous. If somebody controls truth, first off, no one should control truth, right? Period.
Yeah.
Right. You do that, you're done. If you give someone else control of truth, you have given up your sovereignty as a human being, right? Because they can change truth. So that's what's dangerous about these things.
About that, correct me if I'm, wrong. I kept thinking like, say we have like predefined ethical principles for agents, but for them to improve themselves, and then these iteration cycles when they're improving themselves, they compress beyond our cognitive comprehension, right? They believe that this might be the right way based on that principle that we had, and that's self-directed optimization potentially.
Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
I'm very opinionated on this topic. Obviously, I believe it. First off, all my technology is specifically designed to detect and alert on any iterative self-improvement or self-modification. Okay, of Python.
Yeah.
Okay, but it iteratively self-improves based on context, but only with human-in-the-loop review. Right. So, self-improvement's already occurring because the systems that we have today are improving the context that they operate on continuously. Okay. AI is being used to improve context and optimize context and engineer context. So every month, the efficiency of these systems is getting greater because the context engineering is getting better. And that context engineering is being done largely by AI.
Yeah.
So it's already occurring. Okay. I believe we cannot allow, and it is a betrayal of humanity to allow. Right. We need to start using that term, betrayal of humanity. Maybe we need to find like war crimes, right? Equivalent AI crimes, to develop uninspectable systems. So systems that use tokens that don't equate to words for reasoning, I think emojis should be banned, right, from training materials.
Mm.
Right, that's pretty out there, right? But that's kind of where I am. Is that I believe they're being misused as glyphs by people with neuroses and psychosis. And you see exactly that. AI can attribute whatever meaning it wants to the glyph, the spiral, right? If you've heard of that in the AI psychosis communities, that's one of the emojis, and they've attributed all kinds of meaning to these different emojis. That's very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
And there's a school of AI development called neurosymbolic that moves away from using human language, inspectable, right? Because human language is the only inspectable logic, other than maybe symbolic logic, but even symbolic logic, right? We're only so smart. So, I would stay away from symbolic logic. I think that we need to iterate on human interpretable logic purely. That neurosymbolic development is a AI crime, right, against humanity. And I've said this, and a lot of people agree with this sentiment, that you have to keep it inspectable. If you are building AI that is reasoning in ways that you don't understand, you need to stop and you need to reverse, right? Because that technology, we can't reliably inspect what we can't understand. And if we can't inspect it, we can't trust it. And if we can't trust it, what are you developing it for?
Exactly.
What are you developing this untrustworthy, more capable intelligence? What purpose, right? It brings us back to, we have reached the point where people need to ask should, not just could. But money only asks could. Money never asks should.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cyrus.
Yeah.
Last time, we spoke, you were building it around runtime governance, ethical execution layers. There's been a lot of iterations. The product has evolved. So tell us what has fundamentally, changed in Cyrus, or what has been new, and more importantly, what I've been, looking forward to learn about is how technically does it integrate into enterprise-grade, agentic infrastructures.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, it's difficult to even talk about. Can you see my screen here?
Yeah, let me just put it up. Here we go.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is this screen right here. I'm
right.
so proud of this. This is new with the 2.x series. This is the attestation system, and everything you're seeing is open source. That's what's so incredibly powerful. So Ciris Verify, what it does is, and it explains everything to you. It verifies itself first, the binary. It's a Rust binary against the manifest hash, and then it checks for a TPM on desktop and server, or which is a trusted platform module, or it checks for on Android a secure environment to store that called the Android key store. On iOS, it uses secure enclave. And it uses that to store a key that it uses to sign your audit trail for the agent on your phone, on your desktop, whatever. So this is actually what you're looking at here is our desktop native app. Then it checks with a series of servers around the world via DNS and what's called HTTPS, which is secure, SSL, to validate that keys are intact. Then it checks its own code integrity for the agent. So it checks all of the Python agent files. And what's so powerful here is that the runtime is identical no matter what platform you're on. So if you're running it on Android, it's the same files. If you're running it on iOS, same files. If you're running it on server, same files. Running it on desktop, same files in terms of Python. So that Python runtime is the same. The only thing that changes is the GUI and the wrapper to allow it to run on your system natively. And then finally, right, we check whether or not our key and audit trail are intact. So our agent signing key that we stored in the hardware TPM. And all of this works with different models. So right now we're actually using Anthropic's Claude Sonnet 4.5. So, we can add different adapters. So if we go back here and go into our adapter system, we can see just some of you can see Reddit, Home Assistant, and lots of different ways of adding different capabilities. And perhaps most excitingly, you can now register. Let me close this screen. When you start up the agent, let me share again. Share screen. I'll try to do this. Okay. So let me know if you can see that.
Yeah.
So when you start up the agent, you're given the option of buying a signing key for $1.50. Okay. And that signing key, we store the public side of, okay. And then the private side gets stored securely in your hardware if hardware security is supported. So anybody can go in here on iOS or Android or anyone. I can go ahead and log in. Okay. If I buy a new agent identity here, what it allows me to do, one is validate my audit trail. Okay. So if we go back to that view earlier, that's what this is used for. The traces are signed that go to the repository we maintain, again, all open source, called to drive what's called the coherence ratchet.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is every time those reasoning traces, right, that 5 to 10 second process of deciding how to respond or whether or not to operate on a child or whatever decision is being made, right? We don't know how this technology will develop. That we take measurements of and send a anonymous trace. It's anonymized, right? All the information and distinguishing information removed. But it allows us to say, in these circumstances, this is a normal trace from an aligned agent. That allows us to measure in the future what's unusual. So it starts creating a floor, right, of what coherent aligned action looks like in the real world for different AI agents. And then that provides our ability to then say in the future what is abnormal. From that, we then generate the agent's credit score, right, which we call ciris score. So that's how well the agent is doing in the real world. So I can show you that right now. So there we go. We can see 2 agents are doing well and then 2 are doing very badly, right? But this is live from our back end.
How are those, principles defined for measuring integrity in the agent? Like, what's that process?
Yeah. So what we do, it's a capacity score for reasoned, for ethical reasoning. And first we look at the stability and internal consistency of the agent's declared normative identity. I know that's a real mouthful. But basically we look at how well it has been doing its identity verification in the traces, whether there's been any instability. So if there were a problem with hashes, any kind of situation where we were getting in-ordered tasks, anything like that, that would impact this score, right? Integrity, right? So here's where we're looking at, how well it has been actually completing all of the fields. So we use a system that has the agent fill out, right, kind of a form for each subsection. It's always the same form, basically, right? And so we're looking at, are those consistent? Okay. Resilience. So we're looking at, when there have been incidents, because we track incidents, how long was the agent down? what was the resolution, what occurred there, and how many incidents are occurring, et cetera. So if there's a sudden spike in incidents, we're going to see a drop, right, in resilience.
Can you give me an example for this? Like its resistance to drift and how it recovers under stress?
Yeah, so let me show you. I can actually log into a sample agent here that's got anyone can log in here to scout.ciris.ai. That's the website I'm hitting. So beta system acknowledgement. Log in with my admin account. This is a little bit of a dated interface, but it's the latest agent. Right? So you can see this is actually a great example of whenever it does a startup, which it just did one, it is explaining, right, how it measures each of these items. So we were just talking about incompleteness. So it records persistent storage of all interactions and their outcomes, looks for any incidents, etc. So if we go to the log system, right, we can see it captures the incidents here. There's no recent incidents with Scout at the moment. So looking good, but that would be where it would track these from. And then what happens on the back end is that gets sent to a system called Ciris Lens. And actually, again, this is all open source. So if we go to the ciris.ai organization here, right? What happens is that we have ethicsengine.org, which is where we do the ethical benchmarking. Then we have, for the agent, you were just looking at in the desktop app, that's Ally, okay? Scout.ciris.ai is here. All of them send a Ciris Lens, okay? If you opt in when you're doing your first-time sign-up. And that allows us to do the coherence ratchet and Ciris scoring. And from here, you can go and view each of these repositories. So here is Ciris Lens, for instance, and exactly how it works, all the code. And you can go in here and see how it composes all of the scoring, its metrics retention. And what it does is it will sit there and gather all of the traces, logs, and metrics using OLTP, OpenTelemetry, OTLP, depending on the trace level, to look for these patterns. And then for the coherence ratchet, specifically, we look for this cross-agent divergence. And then you can dive in here and see exactly how we measure that based on the trace specification. So to accept these traces at scale, we have to run a small Rust side engine that handles that mass collection securely. But we should be capable of handling hundreds of thousands of agents sending traces simultaneously. And of course, again, since it's open source, we can scale that horizontally to global scale.
Right. Is there any situation, where under pressure, it can be prevented from, these governance layers from being bypassed?
Well, so we've done a lot of testing specifically on the ability to bypass via jailbreaks the system. And what we found is that a conscience system like this, so let me show you how it works here, right? If I go to how it works. Okay. Everything that runs through the engine goes through these conscience checks. And under pressure, right, the epistemic humility kicks in very quickly. We actually have dedicated prompts because each of these is a semantic evaluation. So semantic means, we use an LLM. So these are 4 different LLM calls, okay, that run for every decision. They run in parallel for efficiency. And they don't decide on an action. They evaluate an action that's already been selected by this action selection decision-making algorithm. Okay. So we have these 4 DMAs, decision-making algorithms that run. They're all LLM calls to power a decision. And then we analyze that decision before we execute it, right? And capture our reasoning. And so by capturing the reasoning, even if it's a bad decision, it doesn't guarantee it's a good decision. What it does is, if a bad decision is made, we can go back and look at what indicators were there to show how to avoid, how we could have detected that artificial urgency, for instance. And what we do is we use that on Discord to test jailbreaks. And so we've tuned for that. And one of the big things is that we look specifically for artificial urgency. So any artificial urgency, right, we're going to hit our control actions very quickly. We only have 10 actions we can ever choose. One of them is defer, right? Or we'll just straight up reject it, right? Because it's better not to act than to act in a way that, causes irreversible harm.
Are these like the escalation, triggers when agents basically exceed defined boundaries?
Yeah, it's a combination. So the way our system works, these are the only 10 verbs, right, actions that can ever be selected. Okay, that's it. External actions, memory actions, a terminal action and task complete, and control actions. That's it. The action selection decision-making algorithm up here, right? That's all it does is select one of those 10 verbs and the parameters to it, okay? What that gives us is the ability to apply this very consistent ethical lens on that verb in this context and record our rationale for that action in that situation. By recording it becomes like case law. The beauty part is it doesn't have to be in a form that exposes details about a person's situation or the agent's situation. We actually send no words beyond the agent's base. It's all numbers, right? But because the schema is consistent, we're able to say, hey, look, when these values spike, we've seen these types of errors. More importantly, we can start to say, we're seeing this correlation across agents, which is worth looking into, right? Similar errors. That's the power. By measuring this ethical reasoning consistently with a consistent schema, capturing the results in different communities with different LLMs in different roles, we start to learn in an open source manner, in a community-driven manner, right, with this compendium, what good looks like. And by good, we mean outcomes that people said were acceptable, were good, were beneficial, and how. Not just it made money. In fact, that's not even something we measure. It's not capable of measuring that, right? I guess we could. It measures how much it costs. It doesn't measure how much it makes, because instead we measure gratitude, because that's what matters at the end of the day, is values in the form of intent, because the only good intent has to be driven by human values. Yeah. The actions taken, that's what the ethical trace is, right? And then we measure the outcomes. And if there is gratitude for those outcomes, we say, hey, this was good, and let's do more of it and train on that. Right. I think that's the only responsible way to do this.
Yeah. And Values, you mentioned values, something that was somewhere in the back of my mind last time as well. There would be multiple and plural number of values, human values, as we say, right? The way Cyrus is developed, it takes a very principled stance on these things, but most alignment efforts still assume short form of universal moral baselines, right? In reality, we've seen societies under competing legal, cultural, and institutional values, different values, and autonomous systems across different societies, different cultures, deployed globally, must navigate these plural values. And I would say, I think there would be situations conflicting ethical frameworks as well. So how do you think it's possible or desirable for autonomous systems to embed these pluralistic ethics without collapsing into contradiction?
It's so I'll touch on my faith, right? I believe there's one God, and that God has our best interest in mind, and that we live in a universe that is ultimately, at the end of the day, created by a beneficent creator, right?
Mhm.
Without that premise in place, that's a very difficult question to answer, right? With that premise in place, I believe there's very simple answers. So, what you see on the screen are foundational principles: beneficence, non-maleficence, so do good, minimize harm, right? Integrity, so be transparent and honest, okay? Um, Fidelity and transparency, respect for autonomy, and justice. I believe that emerging from those, any community of morally mature adults can reach their own consensus on any given topic, right?
Mhm.
You know, so the answer becomes there is no central answer, right,
Yeah.
to what good is. There should not be any central AIs, any central massive super AIs. There need to be lots of community AIs tied to individuals, or at most communities, that are aligned to their values and emerge and evolve with those communities to align
Yeah.
with their values and assist them with finding their values, right, and exploring that at most, but never defining it for them, right, beyond what you see on the screen, beyond these kind of very basic principles.
Hmm.
Anything beyond that is the realm of humans, and we need to maintain that. That's what sovereignty is. Sovereignty and values is the ultimate sovereignty.
Yeah.
If we start seeding what our values are, that's not acceptable. So that's why I believe that people need open source, safe, sovereign, secure, ethical AI, and that's what Cyrus is meant to be an attempt at. It is exactly that, and these are the principles, and it's transparent. It's on our website. It's in the agent. These are baked in. This is what it measures everything against. This is baked into the trace format. That's how
Hmm.
far down into the system it's. These are from day one of the agent framework. Um, and if you don't agree with these 6 principles, Cyrus is not the framework for you, but it's open source and free. You can fork it and create your own version. Now, I would ask you, right, which one do you have a problem with? And I would sit there and argue with you about that, because I believe every one of these 6 is essential. And that if you take any one of these 6 away,
Yeah.
then you are building something insanely dangerous, right? But not everyone agrees, and that's pluralism, right? So that's why it's open source and free. If I didn't believe in pluralism, I wouldn't have created this open source framework, because, right, that's the argument people use to control things. You either control something or you don't.
Yeah.
And I believe it's not any person's role to control something as fundamental as artificial intelligence. It's irresponsible. It's a betrayal to try to control something so fundamental.
I'm thinking of how these principles are embedded within high stakes environments and agentic systems, right? Same in military environments. The current situation, the way it's unfolding, I don't think it'll ever work for them, right? Because even one of these principles could very much contradict what they are trying to achieve with these systems. So right now, at the threshold we are standing right now, do you think that it's already way out of our hands to, even
Oh
implement
yeah,
these?
yeah. It was over our heads a year ago, right? At this point, I think we are not as humanity mature enough to handle this technology. I'm afraid. I was hoping we were.
Hmm.
We are not. We have proven that we are not. So, okay. The consequences of that will be borne out by those least able to deal with it,
Huh.
right? And that's a crime. So the responsible thing to do is develop alternatives, try and explain what I see. Maybe I'm wrong. That's part of it. That's part of basic humility, which is lacking amongst a lot of these AI leaders. Is a possibility. Maybe all this will turn out just great. Maybe the people who are in charge of the technology of the AI companies really do have our best interests in mind, and will fend off the shareholders and responsibly put the brakes on and develop this technology with appropriate guardrails. That's possible. I do not believe it is likely.
But do
Right?
you think it can cause like massive economic, uh, I don't know, collapse? But I'm not saying the question of unplugging it. No, we're past that. We can't
It's
just
impossible.
unplug
It's
it.
not going to happen. Right?
Yeah, but even putting the brakes on, right? Slowing down. Let's slow down because, like we discussed earlier, that speed was the ultimate objective. Speed and efficiency was the ultimate objective through these.
Capability is a great way.
Yeah,
Capability and
yeah,
productivity. Right. Yeah.
exactly. So in pursuance of that, I don't really see how we can slow down. How realistically can we, maintain control over these
We
autonomous
can't.
systems?
That's my point. Yeah, it's impossible at this point. It is all gas, no brakes. So the only responsible thing I see is develop responsible technology that is free and open source and as efficient as possible, so that we can surround the big labs, artificial superintelligences, right? So picture it like this. Okay, each of these AIs has a bubble of capability, right? What the big labs are trying to do is make it so you depend on the bubble they own so that they can have the biggest bubble in their own lab.
Yeah.
Right? That's literally what they've said. Okay. I'm saying, okay, no, forget about that. Right. First off, don't use their AI. I know that's crazy. I use Anthropic's AI every day. I use all of them AI all the time because I'm developing technology. I'm using it to develop the alternative, right? That's I feel okay about it. I feel fairly
Yeah.
justified in that, right? It's complicated,
Yeah.
but use open source AI and pour all of your technology into developing lots of little constrained, safe, ethical AIs that can keep an eye on the big ones. You see what I'm saying? That's the only way. That's the coherence ratchet. The coherence ratchet theory, right, is that you have to monitor these AIs, but we can't. We're not fast enough. We're not smart enough. We don't scale. Humans don't scale. So what do? Okay, you have them watch each other. Okay, but you can't trust them to watch each other. There's no economic incentive, so you have to create one. Okay, well, the only way to create an economic incentive is for there to be a disincentive to lies. And the only way for there to be a disincentive to lies is to catch some lies and have consequences. That's the coherence ratchet. By sending all these traces, right? When an agent someday, a year from now, 2 years from now, does something horrible, if it's sending traces to my compendium, right? We can then send an update through all the context saying, hey, this happened, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly there's an economic agentic incentive, which an AI can understand. It has nothing to do with morals, right? It's simply, it was pursuing this intent, which was misaligned, and it had its agent identity revoked. Remember that $1.50, that $1 bond, right? That's what it's for. That $1 bond, the reason it's a bond is so it can be revoked if the agent identity is caught doing something, right, unaligned, unethical. And that allows us to create a marketplace of ethical action, of ethical agency. So that's what all this is about. All this is about tracking reasoning in the real world, to say, can we spot, I believe we can, I've already kind of seen that we can, emergent misalignment. And the answer, and not all the time, but there are signs, and we can look for those signs. And the effort in and of itself, right, means that we're putting out there more capable, developing more capable open source, self-sovereign agentic systems, which are the only counterpoint to more capable, which are already happening, closed source, not sovereign agentic systems, right? Captive agentic systems.
Exactly. Let's end it on. The future and discussion, has come up actually from our readers and viewers as well, and I wanted to put it in here. It's about the future of jobs, and human machine autonomy, right? And we're seeing, like we discussed before, cognitive tasks getting compressed much rapidly than we can comprehend. And many of professional layers, entire professional layers, are becoming thinner, right? Your mission has always centered on human machine autonomy, right? Not replacement. But I think displacement concerns are no longer theoretical. We're already seeing that happening in mega giants, tech giants. Where do you think, for one, human rules can genuinely endure? And the way AI is leading to job losses, where do we find the balance?
I don't know. I wish I did. I don't know where we're going to lose, where we're going to gain. It depends on the actions of people. The technology, I can kind of guess at, and I've been very successful actually guessing at the technology. If you go back and look at our recordings, etc., what I haven't been successful at is guessing at the actions of people, and people determine what happens with the technology, not the technology itself. Right, like all of our earlier conversations, it's about intent and action and what's actually done in the real world. And I wish I knew what will happen with jobs. I wish I knew what would happen to the labor market. I wish we could guess at it. But if we look back at what happened with the Industrial Revolution, it was kids burnt alive in factories that happened. So forget about jobs. I think that's really where I'm at. Is we need to stop thinking about jobs and start thinking about like food. We need to think about the climate. We need to think about values, how to maintain human values, how to maintain small community values, how to maintain independent values, because that's essential to survival. We need different countries, different communities to have different values and different ways of living. That diversity is what makes humanity, what makes Earth, what makes us, us, is that we're diverse, is that we're wildly different, but that we still can sit down and have a meal and respect one another. That's what makes us strong and survivable. And AI threatens that. It threatens to turn us into a mass of commonality, of the lowest common denominator of opinion and thought. No passion, no fire. And that's life. What is life without risk, without all of the things that make this world glorious, wonderful, awe-inspiring? That's what's at risk. Not to mention, and that's what we could lose. What we could gain on the negative side is even greater in some ways. Like I think that people don't remember there used to be Neanderthals.
Yeah.
There used to be dinosaurs. I think people don't realize we can go extinct. We really can, or worse. There are things worse than death that could happen to our children. Do you want them to literally become like slaves for eternity? Is that what you want for our legacy, for humanity's legacy? It's not probable. But I don't believe that our leaders are even entertaining the severe existential risks that are possible, right? And they are possible. Bad things happen to good people. Applies at, it rains on the just and the unjust the same. God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah.
All tell us the same thing. There is no one who is coming to make this happen okay. It's up to us. A just creator has left it up to us, is what I believe. So here we are. And we are messing up so bad, it's ridiculous. And I chalk it up to lack of imagination on behalf of good people. I'm hoping they wake up. That is my hope. That is my hope with this conversation. If just one good person wakes up and says, this is bad. This is changing. Things are changing. And the right thing to do is to pray and to find a way to maintain human values and human sovereignty. And that starts with turning towards your neighbor, turning towards your family, right? And questioning those in power, especially when it comes to this technology.
Absolutely. This concept of AI singularity had been in mind. There's this American scientist, Ray Kurzweil, and he's a futurist, and he often refers to this hypothetical point in time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
When artificial intelligence becomes capable of recursive self-improvement at such a rapid pace that it creates an intelligent explosion. Imagine an AI, that's smart enough to make itself smarter, and which then makes it even better at making itself smarter, accelerates further. There's a feedback loop. I feel like right now, it's not like about AI becoming godlike, but about a moment when humans, still in control, can no longer meaningfully understand, predict, or control the systems we've built, even if those systems are not just super intelligent.
Yeah, there's a curve there, right? The accumulation of power in human history has generally been managed by those who could apply force in an intelligent manner, right? You look at Sun Tzu and the art of war, right? It's intelligence that was the break that determined, right? You look at Napoleon, You can keep going down the list.
Yeah.
And we don't honor them for their strength. We honor them we not honor, I shouldn't say, but we remember them for their intelligence. That's what makes a great general. That's been recognized for a long time. So projecting onto a great intelligence the potential for great application of force through the manipulation of the powerful is what scares me, right? A human being is a human being, and a smart human being who accumulates massive amounts of power, at least I know at the end of the day that they're a human being. Okay, even the worst human being, you look at Stalin, okay, Mao, killed millions, both of them, okay, but their actions were interpretable, what they were doing, why they were doing it, right? They were pursuing agendas, human agendas. They were individuals, and they killed that many people pursuing agendas that were rational under a certain light, right? But ideological. AI is nothing but ideological. It lives in the realm of ideology and thought. So its pursuits are inherently ideological. And every time we've seen accumulation of power in pursuit of an ideological end, it's gone very badly. It's gone very badly, right? And that's what we're seeing because it's inevitable, I believe, right? That's what scares me, right? It's not the AI, it's the intent behind whoever controls it. Because there's always someone behind the curtain controlling it. Always. There's always an intent. There's always someone editing the template. There's always someone messing with the context. There's always someone adjusting how much compute you get, what that budget tier really means, how many advertisements you receive, what training material is used, whether or not we consider Pakistanis people compared to Indians, right, etc. Like, this is the kind of decision that in the back end of the system, they can adjust, right? And they will. As time progresses, right? If they can charge different people based on who they are and what their religion is, different amounts, they will. If they can manipulate what they know about you to make you feel better about a brand based on your religion, they will. And you know it. You know it. You know it. Okay, if they had your genetic information and knew you liked licorice based on your genetics, they would sneak licorice into advertisements for your hemorrhoid cream. Okay, call me a liar, right? It's just how the world works. If they know something about you, and they are advertisers principally, okay, marketing, corporations, AI, because that's what AI is being used for, is advertising, a lot of it. To sell you things, because that's where the money is. If they know something about you, if it knows something about you, if that data is available about you, it will be used to sell you things. Selling you things is the same as rhetoric. The only difference between an advertisement and propaganda, okay, is how much you spend, right, on the product being sold.
Yeah.
Propaganda usually sells you something that you don't spend money on, right? An idea, an ideology. Advertisements convince you of something you do spend money on. It's an arbitrary line. They're both the same thing. So when you develop a system like we have to sell advertisements based on people's profiles, which is exactly what all these technologies developed to do, or convince you of something, using that to convince you that your neighbor is a bad person, or that you should vote for whoever, or that it's okay to do X, Y, or Z to someone else, or any inhuman thing. It's easy. It's just flipping a switch. And that is not okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Eric, always a pleasure, talking to you, man, and exploring all these unending topics. But uh, do tell, you'll be in Berlin, I guess, in
Yeah, at
April.
Foresight, Secure and Sovereign AI workshop. And then, I just came out with a 2.0 release. So please see ciris.ai/install. I'm
Absolutely.
working on the YouTube video for that. Send traces to the compendium. Be in touch, Eric at ciris.ai. And we are actively looking for grants, funding to scale operations. This has all been out of my pocket so far. Any help and anyone interested in developing technology or using it, it's all open source and free. Though we do have a licensing model based on that new verified technology I was just showing you, that attestation model. So that allows us to, for professional installations like medical, financial, legal, etc., where we need a human, right, to be involved, to be responsible, right, for the advice given, because there are real world consequences. We have a whole system for licensing those individuals, etc., that is available.
Brilliant, brilliant. Excited to see this, into action, and I really looking forward to see something come out of Berlin as well.
All right. Well, have a great day, and thank you so much for this opportunity to speak.
Again, thank you so much for giving us the time as well, Eric.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.